You
Yeah.
follow a lot of stocks, but particular expertise in the auto industry here, based in Michigan. And I mean, a lot of people are happy about the GM stock and the recent run it's had, but not so much as Ford. So let's just talk about GM catching a downgrade today here from Morgan Stanley. Took a long time for the stock to move over $40. Talk about GM and moving forward.
So, when we look at General Motors, we now separate it into, our narrative, we separate into what we refer to as a legacy business, which is really the current business where all the money is being made, in legacy business being personal transportation, internal combustion vehicles. And then the future business, which is flexible mobility, ride sharing, autonomous EVs. Okay, when we think about the future business. And what GM has done very well over the past several days and weeks is to not only, they've talked about what they're doing in the area of technology, what they have coming in terms of electric vehicles, the partnerships and purchases they've done relative to ride sharing and autonomous vehicles, and the technologies associated with getting into each of those spaces. And they, as a car company, can easily forward integrate into ride sharing things in those areas. But in the legacy business, they've also done well a couple of things. Low fuel prices are helping all the automakers who make a lot of SUVs and trucks like GM and Ford. From a product mix standpoint, those are the higher margin vehicles. And what GM has been doing well this year is scaling back fleet sales, focusing on their personal and commercial sales, but the higher margin sales. So we saw production decline, overall sales decline in the third quarter, but earnings was quite strong.
Sustainable trend.
I think it's sustainable. I think that the leadership that they have in place right now is really, pardon the pun, firing on all cylinders. They are doing a good job of articulating a strategy versus, what we're still interested in hearing. What is Ford's mass market electric vehicle going to be? What are other companies doing in the area of, in terms of partnerships, purchasing technology, developing technology for autonomous vehicles, partnerships in ride sharing? Mary Barr and the rest of the leadership has articulated that very well for General Motors. So we can see how well they're doing at running the company now and generating strong earnings right now. And even though we're beyond peak auto, right? We had a strong September sales month because of the hurricanes, but peak auto of 17.5 million vehicles last year, 2016. That's not just the peak auto for this cycle. That's the peak auto forever for the United States, because we're seeing a structural change in transportation. As ride sharing comes online more and more, we know that the average vehicle in the U.S. sits in a parking lot, driveway, or garage 96% of the time. Ride sharing will make our transportation far more efficient. It already is, and it will continue to do that in a big way. So we know that the peak auto that we saw were on the downside of that, and there's a structural change going forward. We'll never see 17.5 million vehicles sold in the U.S. again. And this year we're on track for about 16.5, and we're on a beyond the peak cyclical downturn, and we believe a long-term structural downturn in total vehicle sales. But GM is maximizing profits right now on the other side of peak auto, and they are articulating very well their strategy in these future segments and future technologies and partnerships that they need to be successful in what transportation is moving to in the U.S. and around the world.
All right, let's go to the other side of the coin here. Ford Motor with their new CEO, Jim Hackett. I guess in your opinion, his strategy remains unclear. What does Ford need to do to get back going in the right direction?
They need to articulate that strategy that GM has done so well. And we might get some of that tomorrow in their earnings release. We might get in that press conference, we might hear more about what Ford is going to do. There's already been, some management shakeup, and, there's been a focus. He came in with a focus of looking at what are they going to do going forward in terms of autonomous vehicles, in terms of future technologies and flexible mobility. We need to hear the details and the action that we've seen out of GM in electric vehicles. And look, I think there's a widespread belief out there among many that electric vehicles are going to be the only thing you're going to see on the road in 10 years or maybe 5 years, and that's just not the case. IC engines are here for a long time to stay. Just saw a report that Mazda has had a breakthrough in developing a technology to make IC engines 30% more efficient, which also makes them greener. So IC engines are going to be here for a long time. But if you're a major automaker these days, you've got to be articulating a strategy of what you're going to do in the electrical vehicle market, because batteries are coming down in cost, which is the big cost driver, and electric vehicles at some point will be more economical than internal combustion engines. And we know what the future is. We know where things are headed, and GM is already there with the Bolt. They're there with a car that's readily available, that they're already doing some testing in Manhattan and other major cities for rideshare, autonomous driving. It is, again, they're articulating that strategy, and we're seeing it in action, right? We're seeing things happen with Ford. We're still waiting to even hear what they're going to do.
Moving on here to the, I guess they're not really a Detroit motor company anymore, Fiat Chrysler. They caught a bid off rumors of a Chinese purchase or selling a Jeep, and it never really materialized, but the upward movement didn't stop. What's Fiat Chrysler doing along with GM that has a stock price appreciating nicely?
Yeah, it's interesting, when you look at the CEO of Fiat Chrysler, he even questions the whole autonomous technology, and he's questioning the future. So a very different perspective there versus Hackett at Ford and Barr at GM, where they seem to be embracing it and want to move forward. The rumor came and went with China. I guess we'll have to see on that one.
You're not bullish old stocks, though, and I guess it's not an auto sector stock. It's a technology stock, but we had a nice chat about Tesla Motors here, and it's one of the stocks that you like to short here, and you've done it on a few occasions. My first occasion, do you go out and short the stock outright? Do you like to do with options? When you get a bearish feeling in Tesla, how do you like to play it?
I've shorted it twice, just shorting it outright. Made money both times. Certainly, if you've been a holder of Tesla over the long term, you've made a lot of money. What I'm looking for is those opportunities, and looking now at the opportunity with the Model 3 production and the way that they're struggling is maybe another short opportunity somewhere through here. Could have done it in September and covered now, but I don't, and I always, when we get on this subject, I think that Elon Musk is a visionary. He's accomplished great things in 3 different industries. What his goals are for what he wants to do in terms of societal change are admirable. And you said it. You said it's really a technology company, and I would say that many people look at Tesla as a technology company, and it is in terms of the technology development it does. But what they're doing now is moving to a real manufacturer of vehicles. That's what they're trying to do with the Model 3. And what we're seeing is, and we predicted this, they're not doing it very well. They were supposed to make 1,500 Model 3s in the second quarter. They made 260. Maybe not such a big deal, but they're supposed to be making, he's latest we've heard still claims that they will build 5,000 a week by the end of this year, 10,000 a week by the end of next year. And to get to that, get to the goal soon of, building 500,000 cars per year. They've never built more than 100,000 per year. They'll build a little more than 100,000 this year in total vehicles. But they're at a NUMMI plant in Fremont, California, New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated, a joint venture between General Motors and Toyota. At its peak, they were building 74 cars per employee. Tesla right now is somewhere around 12 to 15 cars per employee. Parts of the car recently were still being built by hand. They're really struggling to move to real mass production of a vehicle. And, we're waiting to see if they're going to make it. And so far, the reports and what we've seen, they're not getting there. So I think there's a real struggle. Can they work through that? Obviously, yes, they can work through that and get there.
We've been on the line with David Kudla. He's the CEO of Mainstay Capital Management, joining us here on Benzinga's Pre-Market Prep. David, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again soon.